So this is Rabbi Flo, also known as Ari Ehrlich, and I'm here with Abe Braha for a second time. Abe, thanks for coming again.
It's my pleasure. Definitely my
Um,
pleasure.
yeah, so last time we spoke more at a high level about sales and the mindset behind it. I thought it'd be fun to have a call where we got, even more into like the details of how do you actually do that? I mean, specifically in terms of what you do, because what you're trying to do is help set up companies with salespeople who have what they need in order to succeed. So, practically. So, I guess maybe let's start from there. What does a salesperson need practically in order to succeed?
So it's a very good question. I've actually pretty recently, sort of like broke it down in my head to five things that a salesperson really like to really get a salesperson to succeed and be motivated and you know have what they need to be successful. I think first off, the first one is they have to have some sort of talent, whether that means like a natural talent or something they've worked on. They have to have good communication skills. So like finding the right person is definitely a big part of having a successful salesperson, sales team. Um, Sales is not for everyone, and that's just the reality. The same way coding is not for everyone. The same, every it has to be the right type of person that has the right type of talent.
Could you describe
So
that
that
type a little bit?
yeah, for
Or are there
sure.
are there are there a bunch of variations of them? Or
I think there are. I think there are a bunch of different variations. I think it also depends on how the company's structured. So if a company's a little bit bigger and they'll have like SDRs and account executives and like customer success people, so you could have sort of different personalities for each one of those jobs. Um, but in general, I think a salesperson, if someone's doing like full cycle sales, they need to be you could see it sort of like you could have a 5 minute conversation with someone. If you're looking for what to look for, you'll see it like pretty quickly. It's like they gotta be like really level-headed, a good communicator, have a good speaking voice where they're pleasant, they're sort of like balanced in a way, but also they come with like this resilience and hustle and you know I have no problem with getting rejected and keep on going, getting up, going to the next one, moving on, following up with someone, putting myself maybe in an uncomfortable situation to go and maybe show up at someone's office or door to door sales
how would
like
you have you heard of the Gottman study where
no.
so Dr. Gottman,
Maybe if you explain it, maybe
this is for
I
like couples work. So he had a lot of couples and he recorded their conversations. And after starting the conversations, he learned how to predict with like 90 something percent accuracy. And I think even the first seconds, not even minutes, but seconds of the conversation, if this marriage was going to work out or not.
I have heard of that. Yeah.
So, I mean, so you're saying like, how would you know talking to someone for 5 minutes if, I mean, you can hear if their demeanor and their communication and is good, but how would you know if someone has that resilience that quickly?
So yeah, so maybe that part it will take a little bit more of a conversation and just seeing them in action. You can never really know, like some people it can trick you and they'll make it seem like they have that. But like for an example, like I interviewed a salesperson a couple months ago and I brought him into the office of my client and just like from sitting with him for 10 minutes, it was just so clear that he was just not going to be that person that was like, oh, but how do I go knock in someone's office? Going to a networking event, it's a lot of people. It's over. It was just like he was just like, yeah, no, I want to do that. I could do that. I could stay up until 7, stay in the office until 7, 8 at night. I could go out to dinner with a client until 11 and come in the next day at 8:30. And it was just like the way he was answering was so like confident and like it would be hard, really hard to fake something like that. And I also like I wouldn't see why someone would want to fake something like that. Um,
Because you're gonna have to do
so
it.
exactly. So it was like very clear, like just from speaking to him quickly, we
Yeah.
could both of us, like myself and the client, we were like, he definitely has it. Like it was so, you know, easy to
Yeah.
see.
What's the second quality?
So the second quality or the second
Oh, the second,
thing that
yeah,
it
the first
takes.
is like, okay, the first is like, is this just the
Yeah,
personality? That's the first one. What's
exactly.
the second
The
one?
right.
Yeah.
So the second one I think is, and this could be different in every single company, every single salesperson, is compensation structure. To create the right compensation structure where they're not desperate to close deals, but also they're not what was I gonna say, on the other end where
We're
it's
still
like,
hungry.
yeah, exactly. They need to close deals to really make what they want. So like for example, um I worked with a salesperson for a short time, and then I sort of like told the company that I don't think it's going to work. He was making a salary of about $60,000 a year. And while that's not a crazy salary, but for his lifestyle, he was getting by very, very nicely. He was able to pay his rent. He had his car. He was able to go out to eat with his wife. And the way that he was living at the stage of his life, it was great for him. And he wasn't the kind of person that was like, I want to be making 100, $200,000. So he was very, very relaxed about, going about his day, coming in late. Do I have to really reach out to people now, or can I sit and, organize the CRM? And for him, that just wasn't the right structure. It was too comfortable for him. Um, as opposed to there are other salespeople that I've worked with who have been working on, let's say, commission only, and they have 5 kids, and every single day they're panicking about how they're going to pay their bills, and they come in and they're super desperate, and they get on a call with someone and they're like trying to make sure they close when the person doesn't even have the problem that you solve, or it might not be the right timing for them, and you're just trying to push 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 because you need to put bread on the table, and you need to pay your bills. So that also is just, it's not going to work. So you have to find that balance, and with every person it's different. You sort of have to make a judgment call. You don't want, you want to give someone enough so they can live, but you also want to make sure that they are hungry to make more. They shouldn't be like, okay, I'm fine. If I never close a deal, I'll be chilling. You don't want that.
So
I think
curious, so
that's
would you ever, I mean, would there be ever be a scenario where you felt like a commission only position was ideal?
so there is, yes. I think if it's the right person and they can really support themselves without panicking for at least 6 to 12 months. And if, God forbid, it didn't work out after that time, they would be able to just recover very, easily. Then I think it's possible. The only other problem I have with commission only, which it doesn't always happen, but it happens like I would say 90% of the time, is that when a company hires someone on commission only, they are not invested in the salesperson, which what ends up happening is that they don't give enough attention, give enough resources to the salesperson because they're just like, oh, whatever, if it doesn't work out, I'm not really paying this person, I'm not losing anything. So they just, sort of leave it and let it
Right. So
just
it's
run its
like
course.
there really is, especially in this position, and it's important to find that sweet spot so that both are invested.
Yeah, I think it's different with every company and every salesperson, in my opinion.
Wow. Okay. What's the third thing?
So the third thing I would say is making sure that they have the right tools so that they can be, organized and efficient. If that means having the right CRM, a dialer, lead data, contact data, if that means, giving them access to networking events that they, can benefit from. Um, any like anything that will be like sort of a tool for a salesperson to help them be successful. Um, they're gonna if that means like, giving them marketing materials or branded swag that they could drop off at people's offices or give out by networking, whatever that means, tools. It's different for every single salesperson also and every single company. Every single, different types of sales will require different types of tools. Different types of teams will require different types of tools as well. And figuring out what are the right things to give a salesperson is very important to make sure because otherwise, if let's say they by themselves can, close one deal, but if you make them more efficient, give them the right tools, they can close 10 deals. There's just you're 10xing their potential. So tools.
And like who I mean, who is supposed to know that? Because I mean, if you're talking specifically for like an SDR, so someone who's really going out there to try to get people in the pipeline, um, the hardest part of the sales. Um, an SDR is not necessarily going to know for a particular position in a particular industry, like what tools do I need, right?
Right. Right, 100%, which is why they need leadership. They need someone that has been there before. Or they need someone that can help even with experimenting and, doing research and looking for different tools and figuring out what can be helpful. Sometimes it's not just like an answer that's there. Sometimes it takes looking at a bunch of different things and seeing what's what.
I mean, it's kind of like marketing. You got to try a different bunch
Yeah.
of different things out and just see what works.
It is really is the same thing as marketing. It's just a little bit more direct. But
Right.
SDRs are really like marketers.
So, I mean, have there been any tools in particular that you found across various industries that are like, you know, usually the first ones to go to or to try? Is it, a Zoom Info or a Seamless? Is it like what would be the things that, really LinkedIn Sales Navigator versus regular LinkedIn? Like what are the things that, really give, you know, typically what are the most important tools to have that generally you want to try those before you go trying others?
So first off, before anything, you need to have an efficient CRM. CRMs, most of them out the box, are a little bit, um, they're not really tailored to exactly what you need. Every company needs different things. I'm trying to think of a good example. Like, let's just say you're selling something that has, a lot of steps to the sales cycle. You need to be able to create a pipeline within your CRM that can track every step. If it's just something that, is demo and close, your pipeline might be a little bit shorter. You might want to focus a little bit more on like lead separating, creating different buckets for different types of lead, whatever it is. Um, but having a good working efficient CRM is basically like I don't want to say it's impossible without that, but if you're building a team and you want to have multiple people, it's pretty much impossible without having a good CRM system.
Hmm. Okay. Are there any CRMs that you have found to be the most adaptable and easy to use? Um,
I love Close CRM. It's just so easy, it's so simple, and it's so efficient. For bigger companies, like if you need more than just, you know, tracking leads and tracking deals and a dialer and things like that. You need more like integration with your other parts of your business, with accounting, with operations. Then you're gonna need something more like Salesforce or HubSpot, and you'll have to like have an engineer actually customize it. But if you're just like a small business and or even like a solopreneur, close is just it's the easy. It's so and from what I've looked at so far, it's probably the easiest CRM.
Nice. Okay, and after the CRM, what are the tools that usually
So it depends. It really depends on the type of salesperson. Like if you're just an SDR, I'd say you need to make sure they have like a dialer and they gotta have good lead data. It's just somewhere where every company gets stuck is getting good lead data, making sure that their SDRs are not just dialing all day, but they're actually having conversations throughout the day. Instead of having, one answer every 100 calls, you could have 30 answers or connects every single 100 calls. So to be able to get good lead data, a good efficient outreach system. So if that might include something that can help you with dialing, also outreach through, let's say, LinkedIn, email, some of those kinds of tools, like you mentioned before, some good lead data, which like Zoom Info or Seamless or what I've been using that's very, very good is upcell.io. They're sort of like a company that's focusing on cell phone numbers. So very, very good mobile data, mobile numbers, very accurate. Something like that would be very helpful. But it really depends on like the industry. Some
whose
industries
job
might
is
have
it
more.
typically to be sourcing like good lead data? I mean, how
It's it's my job.
and what's that like? I mean, like for when you go into a different industry that you haven't seen before, and you're trying to figure out how does this company like who are their leads and how would I get like where's the best place to source data? Like how do you go about
Yeah.
that?
In some industries, it's extremely challenging, which is why I also think that you can't just have cold outreach, cold calling all day long as your only channel of outreach. You have to be able to be getting your name out there in different ways, whether that means networking, WhatsApp groups, Facebook groups in certain industries is very effective. Um, Maybe just like creating some sort of network within the industry and meeting new people, sitting down with some leaders in the industry and creating good relationships with them so they can refer you different things. Having a good social media presence where you get some inbound or you can even if you're doing outreach, but you know a little bit better who can be your target. Um,
And they
some of
also may
those
know more about you even before you call them because they've seen you.
100%. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, 1,000%. But some of
Well,
those types of things,
the phone is still the primary weapon here is still the phone.
it is. But if you're just cold calling into the abyss, you're just gonna make yourself frustrated. And cold calling these days, whatever anyone tells you, is getting much more challenging because less people are answering the phone. And it's just the reality. There are tools like Titan X or Shore Connect, which can help you with they're basically data validation tools. What they do is they help determine who is more likely to answer the phone and separate them into. So you give them a list of let's say 100 contacts, and they'll give you back them broken down by who's most likely to answer. So let's say 30 of them will be a very high chance they'll answer. Another 70 of them or whatever, so, sorry, another 60 of them, 50, 60 of them will be, low chance, but maybe answer. And then like the rest will be like they're never, the chance of them answering the phone is like very, very low. And then this way you focus on the ones that are much more likely to answer, you get a higher connect rate. So that's also another tool that could be very helpful for certain salespeople. Um, but you got to figure out the right things because also a lot of companies can't necessarily purchase all these tools. Like they're expensive, they add up. especially a thing like Titan X is very expensive. Even lead data itself, Zoom info, seamless. You're going to be looking at least two, $300 a month. After, all the different tools, it adds up. So you got to be able to make it happen. And yeah,
So when you got it, got it. So I mean, so tell me a little bit more though about what that's like when you go into an industry and you go into a company to solve this problem. It's like, so you have to try to figure out, okay, what data is going to give them the best, what tools, I mean, can you take us through almost like a sample like engagement of like what are the different things you had to think about and figure out?
yeah,
Uh,
for sure I can. I'll give you a great example. I worked with a company that's in the real estate, commercial real estate world. They're a subcontractor. So this is sort of like a demolition company. So they're looking to sell to um owners that are doing demolition on their properties, or even more so owners that, constantly have new properties that need demolition. So then, you create the relationship, you have upcoming business, you have new business all the time. So for an example with them is like we came on, and um I sort of told we got them set up with CRM, which was not in place. They were sort of just working off WhatsApp and emails and trying to track things on their own. Put in place a CRM, got them a great salesperson. Um, and then we sort of were looking for leads for a little bit. Like it took, I looked in, I have Seamless, so I sort of like try to look in Seamless to see if there's any good ways to bring leads in. And it was very inconsistent. There were a bunch of other, sort of like news subscriptions that they were subscribed to, every day they'd put out different news articles about the new properties that were bought, or, you know, deals that have been done recently. So they were getting some stuff like that, but they didn't have like a real good system. So I found a tool after doing like a lot of research. There's a bunch of different tools, but we sort of looked into each one, and we came up with there's this tool that we used um which gives you access to pretty much all of the upcoming deals or done or developers and purchases, everything like in the commercial real estate world, basically giving you a way to keep up with what's happening, plus contact information, plus, company names, developer names, phone numbers. So we got access to that tool, and that became
that was
sort of
just like a
like
regular paid
the
subscription,
yeah. So it's like a pretty expensive tool, but for them it was really worth it because it was giving them this
industry
visibility
specific.
into,
Yeah.
yeah, very industry specific, giving them like this visibility into the entire construction world that, in the areas that they sell to. And for them that was like really great. It worked out very, very well. Um, trying to think of any other tools that I helped them implement afterwards. But that was like really the main thing, getting them set up with a good CRM. Um, it took a while to build out because we sort of built it out. We had to come back, forth, change things, fix things, add things, different users, different pipelines for different products, and it took a while to really like customize. And that was built out great, like super efficient. I'm very happy with how it went. They're also were very, very happy. And yeah, so that's like an idea of sort of
You kind of started with like
coming.
a wider net with Seamless. You realize, okay, this isn't getting us. And so you have to kind of like then, okay, maybe we need something a little bit more specific to what we're looking for. And then you found that.
Yeah, so I think
Um,
now they're using Seamless as well to sort of help with getting like contact information, but they have a much better system of actually like finding the right people instead of just searching commercial real estate in Seamless. It's much more targeted before they get to seamless.
Right, right, right. So that was the third thing, which is, the data, um the lead quality. Or was that the fourth? Wait, the first was the
That was
person,
the third.
the
Yeah,
second was
first
the
is
compensation structure,
yeah, the
and the
third is
third was the
tools.
tools, which included the lead data. Your CRM, I mean, the biggest, most important tools being the CRM and the lead data, and
Hmm.
other things besides just for the phone, ways of building relationships. I guess would be like the three-headed monster for that one, you know.
Yeah.
Um, what's the fourth?
So the fourth one I think is the most important one. Without this, you really don't have 95% of the time you don't have success. There has to be a system for accountability. That means KPIs, targets, sales meeting. Um, you know, it can't just be a salesperson is just left and you come back 3 months later and you're like, oh, what deals are you working on? Yeah, a couple. I got some good things in the pipeline. Okay, nice. Hope they
Right,
close.
right. So I'm gonna cut you off here, but I think it's
Okay.
totally coming from respect, which is that, you know, with KPIs, they're only like the KPI is only as good as if the person coming up with the KPI really understands that this is the appropriate metric for this particular endeavor. Because, you know, a lot of the times you can put an arbitrary KPI on a salesperson and it can actually be counterproductive because they're not doing quality work, they're just trying to meet the KPI.
1,000%. And actually it's a very big part of what you're saying is a very big part of creating KPIs and creating targets and creating that structure is when you first set it up, it has to be very clear to everyone that this is something we need to figure out. We're putting a number here because that's a placeholder, but we don't know what it's going to take to make you successful. We know, let's just say you want to close $1 million in revenue at the end of the year. Um, we'll just make up a number. We don't know exactly what it takes to get there. We can come in on day one and estimate that it's going to take 100 calls a day, but we might find out that it might take 20 calls a day plus, spending that extra time networking with real business leaders in the industry. We might find out you actually really have to reach out to more people than that. We might find out we thought the amount of deals that you would need to bring in to close X amount of dollars was higher, might need to be lower. Maybe we made it too high. There's always has to be this, we're figuring it out. And in the beginning, there is sort of this aspect of like, you know, we're trusting you with as a salesperson to be the driver of creating this KPI, which at a certain point, can become a target. We know this is what you need to be successful. Bring in another salesperson. We can sort of like say, here, we've tested this out extensively. We know exactly what you're going to need to do to really be successful. So I think in the beginning, these KPIs have to be sort of flexible, but you also have to be able to hold the salesperson accountable at the same time. So it's challenging also because you don't know exactly
Sorry.
what you have to hold them accountable to, but you also so in the beginning it does become like we're really looking at like concrete opportunities that you're bringing in. How many of those are you bringing in? How many of those close? How many of those do we need to be able to and figure it's sort of like work backwards in a way.
Okay, so if I hear what you said, the last thing that you said correctly, because like most of what you're saying is that, the KPI is something that you actually figure out when you're working. Um, the only issue with that is then if you need the KPI in order to work properly, then you have kind of almost like a circular kind of a challenge here. But what you're saying is that you start from a closed, basically closed business, um, or as close as you can, So I mean, if it's a longer sales cycle, I'm assuming you're starting from, calls booked with more, someone at a higher level than the SDR, and then you're kind of saying, okay, what did we need to do in order to get that?
Yeah,
And, if that's something that's scalable, then I'm sure you just probably run with it. But if it's not, then you start thinking, okay, so you're almost trying to you're experimenting, and then when you see some success, you reverse engineer it. And that's how you
100%.
develop the KPIs.
100%, yeah.
And if when I mean we didn't even get to the fifth one yet, but when I imagine even one person doing this, it's a tall order. I mean, he's got to get his mindset right. He's got to make sure his CRM is in place. He's got to make sure that he's got tools that are going to be the right tools for his industry. And then he's got to start, banging away and then being able to look objectively at what's going on and wherever there was a win and be like, okay, how did I get to that win? And now I got to start doubling down on that and seeing is it repeatable?
Yeah. And also something else I want to just say is like accountability, which is the fourth one, which is the most important one. It doesn't necessarily mean just KPIs and targets. It means that a salesperson knows that they are going to be held accountable, that in turn they will be putting in the work. And they're not just going to be sitting because the reason why I think this is such an important one is because what happens, what I see in so many cases is that founder, they hustled their way to a couple $1 million in revenue. They built a nice back office. They have a great product. And in their mind, they're like, I made it work. I didn't have any KPIs. So no, let me find a good salesperson that can hustle like I did. Go, drop them in the deep end and sort of let them, fly. And then they won't even have a deadline on, when am I going to, let's say, end this if it's not working or, you know, give them a raise if it is, whatever it is. They're sort of just like it's 5 months in and they're wondering, the salesperson didn't close the deal. Yeah, okay, I do know that it takes some time to build up and they need some time. You can't expect the salesperson to be successful overnight. So they come, it's 5 months in and they sort of like have a call with the salesperson and they're like, "Hey, what's going on? And how you doing? How you doing with the sales? Yeah, I got some great opportunities in the pipeline. I actually have a deal with my cousin. If that deal closes, we're gonna be so rich. The company is gonna be double in size." And you don't even know if it's true. You don't know if it's legit. Could be he texted his cousin 3 weeks ago and he said might be interested in it next year. You don't have like real accountability and real
Sounds like a
understanding
nightmare.
of what's going. It's definitely a nightmare, and you have to have sort of like someone to be able to say to them, okay, so tell me a little bit more about that opportunity. When was the last time you spoke to them? What did they say? What's the next step? Is it just left in the air, or do we have something, that's going to happen in the next X amount of weeks? Are you waiting for them to follow up? Are you following back up with them? Did they tell you when to reach back out? Like something to really go over and say, you know, you're actually here, you started here, you're going more towards your goal, or you started here and you're still there. And then in turn, it's just this is not working and we have to end it. So it doesn't necessarily mean like just creating KPIs. I think KPIs is a part of it, but to have someone to hold a salesperson accountable is very important. And it also has to be done sensitively. You don't want someone to be felt like they're being micromanaged. Um, that never helps. So it has to be like a balance and um, someone that can do that effectively.
Yeah, I mean that's the KPI in this case, it's really about um I guess making sure like there's ownership of the whole process and everything that's going into it. And someone's really owning it and someone's really consciously trying to build. I guess see the difference is that like, when an owner is building their own company, it's their baby. They're selling with enthusiasm and with all the belief they have in themselves. And what worked for them is not necessarily going to work for a
Right.
guy who's capped at, making a high salary, but it's not the same thing as is owning, your own business. And so you have to um it's really almost starting from scratch
Yeah.
and taking ownership of the whole process. Um, so what's the fifth thing?
The fifth thing is probably the most obvious one. Also super important, which is actually just training, getting better at sales, understanding how to sell to people, understanding the persuasion, negotiation, prospecting, um, cold calling, handling objections, uh, just to have someone be able to get better, read sales books, take some sales
How do
courses.
you work when you put a salesperson in as a hire? Like, do you give them training? Do you hold them accountable for them to do their own kind of, study of what they need to work on? Do you listen to their calls with them and kind of coach them through a conversation? Like, what are the things what are the, like, I guess the most important things that you do or you think should be done with a salesperson?
So all of what you said, definitely go over their calls with them, help them understand how to get better. That's also, by the way, like a sensitive thing because people don't want to feel like, you're recording their calls and listening to them. And it's like you have to sort of like come with an approach of like no one's judging and no one cares how you sound. We just want you to get better. And we're doing this I know it sucks to listen to your own voice on a recording, but like we'll get through this. So like that's definitely a part of it is going over their calls, training them on that, helping them, giving them some resources to be able to get better at sales. Um, and also I did partner up with I don't know if you know Jaco Steinberg.
Yeah.
He's a
Yeah.
sales trainer. So it's sort of like an add-on to what I'm doing to give salespeople that I work with or companies that I work with more of like a formal sales train because he has a very, very robust and broken down and scientific sort of sales training to actually get better from a skills perspective at sales. Um, so so I have access to him as sort of like an add-on to what I'm doing to help, if you want your salespeople to really get taken to the next level, um, he would be the guy that I would turn to.
Is there one skill in particular that you see when even if the guy is the right type, he's resilient, he's a good communicator, is there one skill that in general have seen needs the most polishing?
Handling objections. The reason why is because even if you're a great talker and you're quick and you're sharp, to learn the industry and the specific objections of each industry, and not just to learn what to say, to become super familiar and super smooth with responding to those objections. Um, it only comes over time and with practice and with having real live conversations. So, like for example, let's say um, in certain industry, like there are certain objections, let's say, that are pretty standard across industry, across just in sales in general. Like, send me an email, or I'm not interested, or it's too expensive. Those are like the ones that, you can sort of like, you can get better. Even if you have experience in sales, you can, practice those across different positions, different industries. Um, but like, let's say, you're selling. I don't know. Um, let's just say you're selling real estate and it's a specific objection to real estate. Yeah, I would buy it, but we're a little nervous about, the property tax there. I'm just making up like I don't know, like I'm just making something up. But so to be able to say, oh yeah, yeah, I totally get that, and property tax is a very big and sensitive issue. How we go about that is XYZ. To be able to like come to someone and very, very confidently, quickly, smoothly answer those types of objections, those types of questions, it only comes over time. It only comes after becoming more knowledgeable in your field and and speaking and having these conversations and answering these questions multiple times until you could be like, oh yeah, I hear that all the time. It's sort of like, yeah, this is how we go about that.
Interesting. I think that would it be accurate to say that that difficulties can somewhat even come with the personality type? Meaning that I think that if someone is going to be the type of person who is very good at talking and fearless in many ways, and confident, um, the knee-jerk reaction to an objection, would often be almost to power through it. Because that's what they do. Like they get rejected all the time and they just keep on going. Um, and so, but that in a conversation that can meet even that will often have you meeting more resistance. Um, you know, I know, and I'm curious. Well, I'm curious what you think about that. Is that accurate?
That is accurate. I do think that is accurate. Um, so and that is a big part of handling objections like in a whole, like overall, is it's never good to handle an objection like someone says, yeah, whatever, we found someone cheaper. Oh, of course you found someone cheaper, but someone our all our clients we've seen, they found someone cheaper and they all regretted it and came running back to us. You know, I don't want you to be in that position. So like that sort of approach is like that, how you said, like pushing through it and sort of like just like barreling your way and like trying to like put down what they're saying, I think never works. I think the way that you overall need to handle objections is you really need to address an objection and not only address it, actually make them believe that you care about their objection. So I this is my example that I use for this is if someone says send me an email, you could respond in a way of yes, but if I send you an email, you're not going to understand what I have to offer, and it really would be way better and more beneficial for you to just jump on a call with me. And then you feel like, gosh, this guy's just like not understanding what I'm saying. I just want an email. As opposed to, send me an email. Sure, of course I'll send you an email. What's your email address? It's John at whatever.com. Great. Is there anything specific in an email that you want to see, or it's kind of just like an overall overview of, what we do? Yeah, just an overall overview. I just want to get an email, just to see what you guys kind of do. At that point, you've shown him that you actually care about what he's saying. You're taking down his email, you're asking him a question about what to send him in an email. Then you can come back and say, okay, just gonna write down to remind myself to send you an email. You know what? I'm actually thinking. I've been in this job for a while. I'm in sales. The chances of that email actually like landing in your primary inbox, you opening it, you reading it, you actually getting back to me are like pretty low. So like instead of letting this email get lost in the black hole of sales emails, um, how about would you be opposed to kind of like putting some time on the calendar so we could actually go through this together, see if it's relevant for you? If not, we don't have to, go further. Would that be something you'd be open to? So this way, instead of like pushing back on the objection and saying like, no, 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 it's more like, yeah, of course, of course, whatever you say is, I care about. And then you'll see, like, you even feel it. They'll like, first when they say the objection, they're like, no, no, bro, no, 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 no. And then once you they'll like lean back in a little bit and they'll be like, oh, I don't have to hang up the phone right away. I could give this guy another second, like to before like letting him say goodbye. And then you sort of have like a little bit of more of an in. It's like with objections that's like a something that I think is very important overall with objections. But feel like we went off a little bit off on a tangent there, but I think it's an important point.
No, yeah, I really liked it because what you see there is that, and this has been my understanding of it, and let me know if it lands true for you, but that, the core skill of the salesperson does require that resilience. Um, but to make a salesperson really, really good, finessing it and incorporating, really good active listening and empathic like listening, um, it allows you to deliver an even better, punch because first of all, sometimes the objection uncovers that there actually was an issue. Like there actually is a problem. Like maybe it doesn't fit. And so the openness to explore that and understand. But then when you really understand it and you understand it from their perspective, if you still think this is right for them, but they're just kind of hesitating, you can confront with so much more veracity and intensity. It's like I I recently, did this with someone who I was like working to work with me where, there was an objection. I really, really kind of, understood it. And sometimes it's like even in a text message, it's like, and sometimes it's like when you write it, it's even more. I've had this a few times. It's like, I've heard you say this and I've heard you say that, but I also heard you say this and like, come on, man. Like really. But when you've really heard someone and you really listen to them, you've gained enough trust to be
Mm-hmm.
able to do it. Um,
100%. Yeah. Well said.
well, this has been incredible. I guess one thing, how much more time we have?
I have 7 minutes.
Okay. Um, so maybe we'll have to do a third. I'd
We
love
could
to
do a third.
understand. I'd love to understand more like the day, like what's the day in the life of an SDR? Like what does it look like? Well, how do you balance research to actually making calls? Um, how do you manage just exhaustion and drain, after making a certain amount of calls? Like how do you take like, you know, all that kind of stuff of like actually in the job, what's it like? Is it different for different salespeople? Are there actual habits that are very effective across different industries? Would love to explore that more with you, Abe.
I think we should definitely speak about that. We should sit down and again and stay tuned for
Yeah,
the.
looking forward. Okay, well, thank you so much. This is a
Thank
pleasure.
you.
And
That's awesome. This is great. I feel like, just having these conversations, even for myself, it brings out a lot of like, the things that are just like stuck in my
yeah,
head. So it's like
yeah, and
it's
I
helpful for
think
me.
I think it's so valuable, and I think it's not just valuable for companies who are looking to hire salespeople, and now they understand what's needed in order to succeed. But I think it's even helpful for entrepreneurs who are struggling doing their own sales, to understand really what it takes. Or a salesperson who's looking for roles and like might end up in a company who's not giving them what he need
Right.
to know what he or she would need in order to be successful. So yeah, I really
100%.
appreciate it. And I think it's going to be very helpful.
Thank you, Rabbi Flo.
All the best.
All right.